Oops. Okay. Hopefully that works. I'm going to wait a few moments for the folks to dial in. It is now 3 o'clock and time for Houdini Secrets. All right, let's get this show on the road. Welcome, everyone, including all of you Houdini fans. Welcome to another episode of Houdini Secrets Live. I am Chris, and I will be your host for today, introducing you to lots of Houdini concepts. Now, last week we started off with kind of like how to do digital assets in a more advanced way. Now, I don't know if you folks have seen all this or not before, but regardless, I wanted to give it a coverage that it was due, and I wanted to extend it. And so last week we integrated how Python works with digital assets. This week we're going to go into more sophisticated, advanced functions of the interface for digital assets. Now, I have to admit, there is a selfish reason for me putting on this video. And that reason is that I love digital assets. I think they're groovy, but I keep forgetting how to do various certain things, and I got to look them up. And so what I decided, take advantage of this opportunity and create a central video that I could do and go to whenever I want to go and do some various sneaky things with the digital assets. I wouldn't have to go and rethink it is. And in fact, today's presentation may not actually be that long, because once you figure this stuff out, it's really not that difficult and it's really not too complicated. And we should be able to get through it very quickly. But honestly, it took me forever to get through this research for today's presentation, just because I had to go and relearn everything all over again. So that's why I have bare of little brain here. You know, in today, gone tomorrow. I know where my resources are in order to find them out, because otherwise I don't got enough room inside of this head there to keep track of everything. So let's get going and continue where we started off with last week in our advanced digital assets. Okay. So last week we created a digital asset, and if you want to follow along, you could actually go to GitHub, and well, actually this is the address of the video that was streamed last week. But if you want the actual content for the digital asset that was created last week, you can go onto GitHub, go to techart.edu/advanced HDAs, and you can download the HDA that is sitting on there. It's called HSL demo _09 _11 _20.hda. Now, I included that date on there because we will be doing additional changes to the oh, look at that, I'm frozen. Look at that. But anyway, I'll go ahead and fix that in a moment. But the we will be doing additional changes to our digital asset today. And so I want to have two different versions of the same digital asset, one from last week and one from this week, so you know the difference. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and turn on my camera again. I seem to have frozen. Activate, you son of a gun. Okay. I am active again. Yay! Anyway, last week what we covered was Python modules. We covered Python events. We covered other Python modules. We called Python callbacks, and we called variable menus. You know, variable menus as if you were going to create Python in order to create the variable menus. Now this week we're going to be showing some different stuff. What are we going to see this week? Oh yeah. This shows you how to do the installation, and we'll go over that. But what we're going to go over this week is we're going to be doing some embedded files. Okay, one of the coolest thing I think about digital asset is that you can embed stuff inside of them, and that's really groovy because you don't have to keep things around. You could just store files as if they were banks and store information inside digital assets and sneakily hide them in, kind of like a Trojan horse, and get into the scene that way. All right, you can. You're for the parameters that you're able to expose to, you're able to disable them or to hide them. You can create help files or documentation that's really actually pretty nice. You can, when you thought that your digital asset was locked, you actually can get by that a little bit and you can create certain nodes that are writable, and we'll go into that. We will go into creating handles. Well, actually, yeah, well, we already covered handles a couple weeks ago, and I'm going to create a reference to that. And then we're going to show how to do dynamic tabs inside of your digital interface, and what's also known as multi-parms. All right, so let's get this show on the road. Let's see, what was it? Oh yeah, dropping in a digital asset. Okay. Oh yeah, this says, okay, that shows you how to do things. These are my notes. Okay, I'm going to shift myself over to the, okay, I'm going to shift myself over into demonstration mode. Oops, that's not what I wanted. Okay, where's my Houdini? All right, there we go. We should have Houdini going now. Okay, great. And as always, if anybody wants to ask me any questions, the I should have the chat going there, so I should be available. All righty then. Well, let's get things started. Now, the first thing you have to do is suppose you've gone to the GitHub and you downloaded the digital asset that we created last week. All right, what do? You have to install that sucker inside of your Houdini session. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to File, and I'm going to go Import Houdini Digital Asset, and that will bring up a little pop-up window, and it'll ask you which library to use, and we are going to turn around and we're going to say, nay, we don't want that. We are going to want the digital asset file that we want here. We got HSL demo underscore 091120 HDNC. Okay, I use this one to experiment on, so I'm not going to play around with this, but I'm going to choose this one instead and click accept, and then just go ahead and choose install. Now, I was told never to do the install and create. I've never had any kind of like really devastating problems, but then of course I've never really used it that much. So I'm not going to really suggest it or tell you not to use that, but just to be safe, we're just going to do the install today. And with that, I'm going to right click, come on, or I'm going to hit tab, I'm going to hit digital assets, and there it is, HSL demo. And we're going to drop that in there. And of course, our crag shows up just the way we wanted to, just the way we told it to do last week. All right, welcome back, Crag. We are going to expand on you today. All right, now we're going to start, once we've got our digital asset going here. Oh yeah, where are we going to go? Oh yeah, let me get my notes. I need my notes. No, I don't want those there. No. No. Don't want that. Don't. Oh yeah, how about this? And how about here? Let's get Houdini back. All right. We should be good to go. Now we've got everything installed, so let's start working about embedding files into that. Now, you can embed anything inside of Houdini. Can't embed your mother-in-law, but you can pretty much embed just about whatever you want otherwise. You can embed geometry, you can embed textures, you can embed USD files, you can even import, you can even embed clips, which is the stuff that goes into chops, which means that you can put you can get data files from motion capture. You can get WAV files, AIF files, and basically any kind of data that you can have, you can use. And typically you would need a file SOP or a file node in order to read that. But in case you didn't have that, you could use a who.read file inside of Python. So let's get showing how to actually embed a file into a digital asset. Now I'm going to use, if you notice that if you actually go to the GitHub, you can tell that there is a extra file there called jack.obj. I'm going to use that as my sample file there. So I've got my digital asset here. Let's go ahead and embed some stuff into it. I'm going to right click in here and go into type properties. And there it is. Oh yeah, make sure that this is, that you, if your digital asset was locked before, make sure to go ahead and say allow editing of contents, and then you can go click in there and go to type properties, and the type properties window will be brought up. Okay, here's our type properties. Yay! All right, what I need you to do is, in order to embed anything, go over to extra files. Now, there are other places that you can go to in order to embed stuff with, but I like to put stuff in extra files because, well, they're extra files, and it's an easy way for me to remember where I put my stuff. That's kind of a problem, is that when I store stuff around, I tend to forget where I stored it all, and so I like to store places where they are logical, and so this is extra, and so I put them in extra files. All right, so in this situation, what we had to do is just where it says file name, I'm going to go and click on my reader, and here's where I stored my Jack object. So it says Jack obj, click accept, and it automatically fills in the name, so section name. So you could call it whatever you want. Now, it called it jack.obj. Now, my only suggestion is you can change the name around to call it maybe something like FUBAR.obj, and that's fine. It doesn't have to necessarily, but the extension pretty much does have to kind of coincide with what kind of file it is, because otherwise it won't know what to add here. So I'm going to go ahead, and then once you've got the file and then the section name, go ahead and click Add File. And then you see that it reads the stuff in, and then we have this very large OBJ file, which is exactly what I wanted. But you notice here that the extra file is called FUBAR.obj. I'm going to hit apply to save that guy so that we know what it is. All right. Now, how do you access that? Well, thank you for asking. We've got this file, and we can even match the current definition to lock it off because we saved it before. Now we have this digital asset. We don't have any evidence that this file is even on here. So how do we access it? Well, there's 3 techniques from doing it. If the digital asset exists, then you can access it directly. If the node doesn't exist, then you can access it through Houdini and say, Houdini, tell me about this. Or you can access it through Python. And we're going to go through all 3 types here. Okay, so let's say first that this node actually existed. And this, so it's called, where's my path? It's /obj HSL demo 1. All right, cool. I'm going to drop in a geometry node. And inside the geometry node, I'm going to drop in a file node. Now you use file node pretty much to access any kind of specific file that you might want and need. Now here comes the magical sequence. In order to read in a file from Houdini that's embedded inside a node, you got to use something called an opdef command. Great. What is an opdef command? If we go over here to our parameters, I'll show you what I'm talking about. I'm going to go ahead and click into there. I'm going to hit Alt-E in order to expand my window and show you folks, make it a little bit bigger here. But the command here is opdef, and then you have to follow it by a colon. Now, this next part of the statement requests the location of the definition. And in this case, we put in the path and a /obj /hsl demo 1, because that's the instance of our digital asset. Once you've given the location of the contents, you follow it by a question mark, and then you actually give the name of the object that you're trying to access. In this case, we called it, I believe, FUBAR.obj. I'm going to click apply and accept, and it finds out. I have a hunch I named it incorrect. What did I name it? HSL demo type properties. What did I name this thing? I called it FUBAR.obj. Okay. HDL. So here's the problem. I misspelled it. I'm going to pull this up. Is that HDL? It's HSL. Demo 1 FUBAR. Click accept, apply. Yep, that's it. And I'm going to click accept. And it's thinking. All right, there it goes. And this is a really big object. So there it is. So we just read it in. So this object right now, here's our HLSL demo, which doesn't actually display anything. And then we have our object file, our geometry file, which is reading from the digital asset. All right, pretty cool. Now, what if this didn't exist? Excuse me, I'm going to cough here. All right, hope that didn't blow us your ears out. So what if the digital asset instance doesn't exist? So we got nothing in there. Well, you could still access it from a very similar technique. I'm going to drop down a geometry node. And then inside, I'm going to go into my file node. And then we're still going to use an opdef statement in order to call it. But instead of calling it from an instance, we're going to ask Houdini to tell us inside of its own internal memory, give us the contents of the digital asset from internal memory. This is how we do it. We go opdef colon, and then it's going to be slash. And you got to understand the definition, or you got to understand the category that your object is in. Because we created our HSL demo in object level, it is an object HDA. And the code for that, there's a code for it, though this is what took me a long time to crack yesterday, is capital O object slash, and then the type, the data. And so our data type is HSL demo. All right. Now we have to add a question mark, and then we tell it we want FUBAR.obj. If I click apply, accept, okay, there it is. All right. So where do we get a hold of this information? So here it is. We pulled in remote information from a digital asset that doesn't even exist. So how do we tell Houdini where to go? So let's create an instance of our digital asset, and I'll show you where to find this information. Okay, if we right-click on here and say go to type properties, here is the operator type, and this is what it's called, an HLSL demo. And quite often it's the same as the library name, but it doesn't have to be. So you have to get the actual name for where it says operator type. Now that is what you want and need, and you gotta have it. Okay, yeah, it says yes. We want this. Okay, very well, yes. That's how we get a hold of that. But what about the category? Aha. I'm glad you asked. Well, you got to understand the right category. And this is really kind of nutty here. And I'm going to see if we can bring this up and show it to you folks. And let's see, does this actually show? Give me some PowerPoint, baby. Give me some love. Nope, that's not what we wanted. And let's try this file again. Is it going to be this one? No, how about that? Embedding inside a file. Okay, boom, boom, boom. All right, yeah, this is what I want. Okay, if you create a digital asset on the object layer, you have to call the digital asset using the slash object, not obj. You have to call it slash capital O object as the type of category that digital asset is. Now, if you create that digital asset as on the SOP level, you know, even though you access it from the slash geometry, you have to call it from slash SOP. Now, chops is a little bit more straightforward. It's not slash ch like you would if you were accessing that library. The type of digital asset a chop is a slash chop, and make sure to capitalize that C. Okay, a little bit nuttier is if you create a compositing network or a compositing digital asset. Now, Houdini calls it an image network, it calls it COPS, and it stores it in a slash IMG network. Okay, if you're going to use the opdef command, you got to use the slash COP2. That is what is needed. So you got to call it COP2. Otherwise, Houdini won't understand what you want. Okay, now if you want to create an USD digital asset, you would access it from slash capital L LOP. Or if you created a PSD or tasks, then or a TOPS network, you know, that's what it is. You have to call it as a slash top digital asset. Now, it is possible to create a digital asset inside of the material network, but I don't know exactly how you would access it through opdef. Not quite sure, but I'm pretty sure that it might be capital slash mat. If you happen to know, please feel free to go ahead and tell me. I would love to know about it. All right, moving on to bigger and better things. So that is how you access the contents of a digital asset from Houdini's memory itself. Okay, now what if you created something that you can't access from a file node? So in here, we used a file node to read this. And in all of those types that I mentioned before, they have some kind of variation of a file node. Even USD, even TOPS has a file import node of where you have this geometry file and you import the actual path on there, and then you can type in the word opdef. And I have a hunch that you can even expose a parameter into the digital asset itself and then put that information on here. But what if you don't have something that can be accessed from a file? You know, like what if you created a JSON file, or if you created a HTML file, or some kind of other data set that Houdini doesn't have a file reader for. You can use Python to read it. And Python does have an access. And instead of using opdef, you have to use the read file. Okay, so here it is. There's all the other stuff in there. And there's a little preview of what to expect. So I'm going to say print read file, and that will read in data. Now, it doesn't matter where, but inside of that read file, you got to call up opdef as part of your call string. So inside of that, I'm going to say open quotes, close quotes. Whoops. Yeah, it's going to give me a read error. Fine, whatever. Print. And I'm going to say read file. And I'm going to open and close parentheses. And inside of that, I'm going to put open and close single quotes. And inside of that, I'm going to give the name of the file that I want. And the name of that file I want has to conform to that opdef definition that I provided earlier. So it would be opdef : / and since we're doing an object / HSL demo FUBAR.obj. All right, and that gives me the path. All right, so there it is. And I'm going to print that out because there's nothing actually to display it from Python once you read it in. And in-text. Okay, it says print read file. Okay, so I've got too much gobbledygook, too much garbage on there. Oh, look at that. I put a print file in there. So let me go ahead and get rid of this extra square bracket. And I'm going to hit enter. Read file is not defined. Right. Of course it's not. That's because it's a Houdini function and I forgot to give it its namespace. Scroll back over here, put who.read file. Then that knows what it is. I'm going to hit enter. Yep. And it just went ahead and it just read in those contents of the entire OBJ file and then printed them out. Like I said, you could use that for any kind of data then. Okay, I do have to give you a warning that if you check the documentation, it does say that there is a preferred way of accessing embedded information. And I'm going to have to go and talk to the Houdini folks there and see what's up with that. But I think that that is a lie. Okay, so let's demonstrate why. I'm going to hit that. I'm going to turn that off so it doesn't display, but I'm going to say allow editing of contents. And then I'm going to drop inside my digital asset. And I'm going to get rid of whatever is there before. And I'm going to drop in a geo node. Okay, we drop into the geo. And now let's drop in our file node. Okay, let's drop that in here. Alt-E, so I can demonstrate this. And so the syntax that they claim in the documentation says opdef : and now for the path of where the digital asset is located, what they suggest is using the dot as a synonym for the full path. Now, dot is old-fashioned Unix for this critter. So dot is a synonym for this, but let's see what happens with this. So instead of saying the full path, we're going to say dot and then question mark FUBAR.obj. Okay, now when we click apply, we get an error. And it's unable to open it up. But instead of saying dot corresponding or synonymously meaning our /obj/HSL demo type, it thinks it's looking for a SOP file, which would have been the right thing is if we had created a SOP digital asset. Now, since I didn't create a SOP digital asset, I'm not able to access it properly, and so this syntax does not work. I'm going to have to contact the Houdini folks, and if I get word about this in the future, I will follow it on a future detail. And so if we want to get our jack data, I'm going to replace this point by what we used before, /object /HSL demo, and then click apply. And there is our object. And there we go. Okay, very good. So that is all about how you access and how you embed information into digital assets. Now here's our HDA control. Now let's talk about hiding and disabling parameters. I'm going to go into my typedef. Okay, how do you disable and hide parameters. Well, if you look over here, whenever you create or expose a parameter inside of the type properties, you get two slots. One is a disable when slot, and one is a hide when slot. Okay, disabled when is used if you want to disable or make a parameter unavailable, and hide is when you want to make it disappear. Okay, there's a very specific syntax that you have to use, and let's create an immediate example on how to do this. And so in order to demonstrate this, I'm going to, so let's drop in a toggle into this. I'm going to call my label T1. That's my name of my object. And my label, I'm going to call this as, disable. All right, disable. Might as well get my spelling correct. And I'm going to drop in another toggle right after that. And then I'm going to call this T2. And my label will be, demo parm 1. All right, now I'm going to click over on my disable. I'm going to make sure it's horizontally joined to the next parameter. I'm going to return back to my demo parm or T2, and here it is, disable. Now the syntax for this goes as follows. Okay, you have to start with you have to put all your content in between curly brackets. Now, I put a space in there as a reminder is that you need spaces between your curly brackets and your content, because otherwise it won't understand what to do that. And so what you have to do is identify the name of the parameter. And in this case, we're going to say like, okay, give us the status of T1. In this case, we're going to test it. We're going to verify it, say equals 1. So therefore, we've got an if statement in here. And this if statement corresponds to if the value of T1 equals 1, then disable the parameter. I'm going to go File, Save, and then I'm going to quit. And there our parameter is. So I'm going to click Apply. And there is our parameter sitting right up there. Now, if we want to go ahead, if we click the Disable parameter, notice that the demo parm1, it kind of fades out. That means we can't change it. We disable it, and it comes back, and then we can kind of muck with it. Okay, so that is an example of the disable. Now, if we wanted to go ahead and create a hide thing, so let's go ahead and create 2 more toggles. I'm going to drag this one up here. I'm going to call this T3, and then I'm going to give it a label of hide. And then I'll grab another toggle, put it on here, and call this T4. And I'm going to call this demo parm2. And we're going to go hide when, and this is going to be open curly bracket, and we're going to say T3 equals 1. Make sure to put those spaces in there, kids, because if you don't put those spaces in there, it ain't going to like it. And then I'm going to make sure that this is horizontally joined to the next parm. Click Apply. And there we go. Now, when we hit hide, demo parm2 just disappears, which might be exactly what you're looking for inside of your digital asset. If I unclick there, that's the result. Okay, pretty cool. Now, there is some additional syntax that I wanted to go with you. You can do an AND statement or an OR statement. You can do and OR operations. I'm going to drop in one more toggle here. And then I'm going to call this, let's call it T5. And the label is and. And then I'm going to say disable when. And you do this by embedding not just one test statement, but define as many test statements as you want. So I'm going to go ahead and open and close curly brackets. So I'm going to put 2 conditions in here. One is T1 equals, double equals, 1, space, and then T3 equals 1. Notice that I still have spaces in between all of my letters and everything, so I have two conditions in here. The first condition is T1 equals 1, and then T3 equals 1. If I click apply, there's my AND statement. And so if I click this, my AND statement is still on. But if I click hide then, notice that AND then becomes hidden. So that this statement and this statement then have to be true. So I have two conditional if statements in there. So that is my AND statement. So let's do an OR. I'm going to throw one more toggle in here. And I'm going to call this one T6. And then my label is going to be OR. And then disable when. Now, instead of embedding both of the conditions within curly brackets, we're going to create multiple sets of curly brackets. And then, therefore, the OR statement behaves like if this curly bracket set or the other curly bracket set or however other curly bracket sets you have. So let's go with this. Open curly brackets, T1 equals 1, close curly brackets, space, open curly brackets, space, T3 equals 1, close curly brackets. Okay, so we've got two sets of curly brackets now, and each set of curly bracket will be considered, and if either of those is true, then it will fire my disable when. So I'm going to click apply. So now notice when I click disable, OR disappears. When I click hide, AND disappears, and so they're both turned off. But if I was to go ahead and leave hide exposed, AND comes back, but notice OR still stays disabled. That's because OR is a OR statement. Now we unclick that and then OR comes back. All right, cool. So that is how we set the disable when and the hide when parameters. All right. Now the next thing I wanted to go over is the documentation. Now the documentation is pretty cool, and it's really brain dead simple. All you have to do is go over here where it says help, and this is really too easy. And if you're not doing this, then the people who are using your digital assets should gang together and lynch you because this is just too easy. I'm going to go and just type some stuff in here inside of this window. Yeah, actually, I had to save it ahead of time. So here we have some Groovy HDA documentation to demonstrate. We got embedded files, blah, 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 blah. Okay, the key feature is that this data set has to be in wiki format. Now, I don't know how wiki is, as far as popular these days. I don't know if folks still use it, but wiki format, it's still prevalent and folks still do it. And so therefore Houdini is asking you to create your documentation in wiki. And in this situation, the little pound signs correspond to numbers. Okay, so I'm going to create a numbered list here. If I click apply, then everything is fine. Nothing pops up, nothing shows up. However, if I right click the digital asset and I say, give me some help, look what pops up. This is some Groovy HDA documentation to demonstrate embedded files, disable, hide syntax, blah, blah, blah. There it is. All right, so actually this is nicely formatted and integrated with all the rest of the Houdini documentation. So just like a pro, you are adding Houdini documentation, just like the studliest of studs. Now, the other way to access the documentation is to come over here and click question mark, and then the same information pops up. All right. So that is Houdini documentation. Bring up my type properties window. Oh, there we go. All right. Now let's deal about writable nodes. Now you're probably going, what is a writable node? Okay, a writable node. Okay, check this out. Let's go ahead and I'm going to go in and I'm going to move this off to the side here. And I'm going to go into there, and there we have this geo here, and we have our file in there. And let's just say that we wanted to have something changeable, like I don't know, a text file. So I'm going to drop in a font node. And I'm going to type the word FUBAR into there. And then I'm going to merge these two bad boys together. Oh, yeah, we got to make it huge because this thing is really big. So multiply it by 100. Okay, I'm going to change my font over to something that is a little bit more visible. Okay, FUBAR. And I'm going to drop it down here. All right, great. All right, good and fine. You know, that's all good and fine. Now let's go ahead and I'm going to open up my, I'm going to call this, yeah, font one. That's fine. Let's leave that at there. Go here at parameters, and then I'm going to go and grab a button and pop that in there. And then I'm going to call this button SNAFU, and my label is SNAFU. I'm going to leave that button. Now for the callback script, I'm going to tell my font SOP to change its contents. And how do we do that? I'm just going to type that in there. I'm going to hit Alt-E to bring up my notepad here. So I'm going to say who.pwd. What that does is it says, okay, give me a pointer to this particular digital asset. .parm. And then the parm that we want here is /geo 1/font1 text .set, and then it used to say FUBAR, but we're going to tell it to say display SNAFU instead. All right, I'm going to file, save, and then close that. And now everything is copacetic and it's right here. I'm going to hit apply, and everything should be okay. Now, if we go up and look at our digital asset, and then we click SNAFU, it says has no none type. Okay, HSL demo, I misspelled something. So let's go back and see what we misspelled. What did we do? Geo1, font 1. Okay, what did I misspell? All right, so Geo1. Oh, font 1. It should be font 1. Click apply. Let's see if this fixed it. All right, I'll click SNAFU. Yep, and it changed the name over to SNAFU. All right, just as we expected it. All right, move that back to FUBAR. Now, what if we lock this digital asset? So we say save node type and then match current definition. Okay, that means this digital asset now is locked. We cannot change anything of it. So if we go to hit SNAFU, it gives me an error. It says failed to modify node parameter because of permission error. Possible, okay, it's a locked asset. Yeah. Okay, it's a locked asset. Okay, and we do that on purpose to prevent those squirrely artists from going in and mucking with our digital assets after we give it to them. Ha ha ha. But there is a sneaky way around that. If your flow of data or if the flow of your digital asset must involve changing the contents of one of the parameters, this is what you do. You come over here to where it says node, and then where it says editable node, you go over here, find its path, and here it is, HSL demo Geo1, and then it's a font 1, and click accept. Geo1 font 1, that's the full path. Now if we click apply, yes, unlock and save, apply, accept. Okay, now when we save this node, and now if we match it, this guy is now locked. Our digital asset is locked, and we shouldn't be able to change it. Now when we hit SNAFU, it changes. Okay, so by embedding and telling Houdini of making exceptions on certain nodes, we can overwrite the contents of certain parameters. All right, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that we can do inside of this node. This node, there's some other things to manipulate. Honestly, I never really used them. Let's just say, I know one thing is a dive target. And the dive target is that if you do have something exposed and you do make it writable, what will happen is then if you drop into the digital asset when it's locked, and even though you're not supposed to be able to edit it, well, you can because it's now exposed and open to it. And now let's take a look and see what happens. If we click accept here, and let's go ahead and type properties, save node type, and then match. Okay, this digital asset is locked. Now, if we double click to drop into our digital asset, it should have gone right into the SNAFU node. Let's see what happens if we get rid of this and then drop in a new version. HSL demo. Okay, there it is. HSL demo. Okay, we saved it when it was in a changed version. Right. Okay, now but if we wanted to go ahead and change this, if we double click it, oh, it didn't do it. Well, it did it for me yesterday. So I haven't really quite mastered this. Honestly, I haven't used it. But if we wanted to here and type this word in, Groovy, see, it changes. So here we have is a locked off digital asset, but we're able to manipulate all of the individual nodes. All right. Now, some of the other material that I wanted to go over today, I thought I wanted to go over handles. But I realized, and this shows you how much of a brain fart that I'm currently working on here, that a couple weeks ago, back in Houdini Secrets Live number 9, this is number 15, so that would have been 6 weeks ago, we did Asset Interface Part 1, and the date of that is 7/24, and here is the actual link to the YouTube channel. We go into quite definitely how to manipulate handles inside of the digital asset. It's actually pretty cool, and go check it out. It's not one of my better videos. We're getting better week per week, I hope. But that kind of shows you how to use handles. And the second week, right after that, Houdini Secrets number 10, which is a week later, we go over viewer states. Now, viewer states kind of takes handles and kind of like puts them on steroids. And it exposes more possibilities of doing swipes, using the mouse, using button presses, using key presses, and so forth for individually triggering specific events. So viewer states are very, very powerful, and they're probably even more powerful than handles. And if you're interested, go ahead and check out that demonstration. Now, the last thing I wanted to show you folks today was how to use the variable states or the variable tabs on here. And I have to admit, I have to give full credit to my old coworker, Arjuna Ravikumar. Now, Arjuna and I used to work together back in the EA days, and that was probably a million years ago. And honestly, I had never, until this point, looked up on how to create multiparms or how to create dynamic tabs. And so I was looking for a little bit of reference, and I happened to come upon Arjuna's blog over in ArtStation. And well, lo and behold, there it was. And I said, hey, I know that dude. Yeah. So I looked up what Arjuna's got. So a special thanks to Arjuna Ravikumar, and thank you very much for providing the inspiration for today's lecture, because I would not have been able to pull it off otherwise. And if you want to, go ahead and check out Arjuna's um, ArtStation page, and you can check it out, plus a whole lot of other things. So let's go ahead and create a multiple dynamic tab. I'm going to go ahead and open up my type properties. And let's see what they got. So what you would do is I'm going to go ahead and where it says enter HK, I'm going to drop in a folder. Now, here's where things start getting interesting. The folder name, you have to kind of keep under consideration what this folder name is. Now, you didn't have to used to do this, but now that we're working with multiparms, you got to do it. And we're going to call this folder Squiddies, because we're going to create multiple versions of Squidward bopping around on stage and moving around. And so for the label, I'm going to label that as Squiddies. Okay, so we've got Squiddies and Squiddies as the label. All right, cool. Now for the folder type, instead of tabs, we're going to move that to multiparm block list. And for instance, now for the default, I'm going to go ahead and put that as a value of 1, because that will make sure that I have at least one instance created. Now I'm going to go and we're going to create a bunch of squid objects, right? Okay, a bunch of squid objects, and we're going to manipulate their position, we're going to manipulate their rotation, we're going to manipulate their colors, okay? Very simple. So in order to maintain the position, I'm going to grab my float vector and drop that under Squiddies. Now it has to be under Squiddies, mind you. And for the name, now this is super important, I'm going to say pause, and then you have to follow it by the pound sign, the hash key. Okay, what that does is it acts as a placeholder for dynamic names. And so it's going to count, okay, we've got instance 1, instance 2, instance 3. It puts that number right where that pound sign is. And I'm going to put this in its position. And we're going to leave it right at that. Okie dokie. And now I'm going to grab for rotation. And so I'm going to just, I'm just going to grab a single float. I'm going to drag and drop that under Squiddies. And then I'm going to type in rot pound, because we're going to have a rotation for every one of our Squiddies. And I'll give it a label of rotation. Excellent. And now we're going to drop in a color node, because we're going to give it variable color. I'm going to drop that in there under Squiddies. And then I'm going to type in color and label color. All right. Oh, I forgot to put the pound sign there, because otherwise this would not have worked. And now, in order to make things register, I'm going to hit apply. Okay, take a look at what happened here. Because we have this thing, we have Squiddies, we have the number of 1. Now, if we wanted to create multiple Squiddies, we got 1, 2. And now notice that it created multiple versions, for every, so I should say we have 4. Okay, we go minus. And it keeps on adding for as long as we have space. All right, cool. Now let's go ahead and put in the logic in order to take advantage of this. So I'm going to drop inside my digital asset, drop inside my geo, and we're going to replace all of this stuff with a, we're going to use a for count loop. Oh, we're going to use a for each number. So I'm going to right click on here. I'm going to type for each, and we want for each number. Yeah, give us that. Give myself a little bit of room here. Make this a little bit bigger. All right, now I'm going to change the name of this stuff because I never like using the names of this. And so for my metadata, I'm going to call this one meta. And for my begin statement, I'm going to call it begin. And my end statement, I'm going to call end. Okay, we got all those working here. Very nice. I'm going to make sure that meta is path to end. Okay, that's all good. Begin. Now where it says fetch input, I'm going to say fetch feedback. And my end here for the gather method, I'm going to say merge, merge each iteration. All right. Now here's a little tidbit that I picked up from one of my students a few years back, which is really kind of a cool. When dealing with a for each loop and you're going to be accessing the iteration data, instead of accessing this using the detail operation, which can be awkward at times, sometimes it's easier to just make it a channel. So I'm going to go ahead and drop in a null. And then I'm going to call this null something simple like count. And okay, I don't like the color. So therefore, I'm going to color it, give me a green and give me a shape. Oh, let's just make it nice and simple. Okay, there we go. We don't even have to display it. But what for this, I'm going to go and give it a spare parameter. I'm going to right click on this and go to parameters and channels, go to edit parameter interface. So that brings up another type properties looking like Delio for this. And I'm going to just drag an integer over and drop it right underneath root. And then I'm going to call it, just call it count. Keep it simple. Count. All right. And then I'm going to go ahead and click accept. Now for here's where I'm going to put my detail statements. I'm going to go detail. And the detail takes 3 parameters. And the first is the location of my source. So I'm going to put the location. In this case, it's open and close quotes. And the contents of those quotes is ... meta. Let me see if I can get this here. Meta. Okay. My second parameter is the actual parameter that I'm following. So in this case, it's iteration. And we have to give it a default value if something fails, and in this case, we want it as 0. So here we have detail. First parameter is ... meta. Second parameter is iteration. Third parameter is 0. Click accept. And then we should have things good to go. All right, now we have to get this going. It says metadata. It says metadata cooked outside a block, so it's not generating expected results. Okay, we have to get this system working. Okay, good. Oh, this is important. Here we have metadata, it's 9, and here the gather says 10. Now, the counting of multiparms doesn't start at 0, it starts at 1. So for here, in our expression, where detail, metadata, iteration 0, add a value of 1 to it. So it actually corresponds to where it is. So this one has a value of 10 now, which is the same as gather and feedback, where the metadata is actually at 9. All right, so now we have a quick and easy way of accessing our information. All right, so let's go ahead and get creative here. So let's go ahead and add Squidward. I'm going to hit Tab, and then I'm going to type squid. It's actually squab. Give me some squab. Oops. I'm just all over the place. squab. Okay. Drop that in there, and I'm going to call it Squidward. Okay, I'm going to display it. Okay, and then, okay, there's my Squidward, and there's Crag sitting there. Yeah, we forgot to discount him. So we have Squidward sitting there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put, give Squidward some color. So I'm going to add a color sop and deal that in there. And then I'm going to put the output of that into my end node. Okay, yeah, there's no connection between the end or the beginning and the end node, but that's okay because what we're going to do is we're going to create multiple iterations of Squidward, and we're going to be dealing with him around. Okay, you're with me so far? Good, 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 good. All right, so what we have to do now is tell Squidward now that we want its translation to be the parameter that is created, exposed within our digital assets. But look at here where it says position, it's called pause, and then there's this pound sign. Now, if we look at the actual interface itself, when we click position and hover over there, look there, it says it's called pause 1x, pause 1y, and pause 1z. Similarly, rotation is done by rot1 and so forth. And so every time we create a new instance, this number increments. So we have to create a variable parameter name inside of the way that we access our channel information. Okay, not a problem. Now, here is, I don't know, this might be some kind of heresy, may not be. HScript versus Python. Normally, you know, folks use HScript, but in this situation, I kind of like Python. So I'm going to use Python to kind of help this out because it kind of makes the navigation work a little easier. So I'm going to press H for the language. I'm going to change that over to Python. All right. And we're going to do that, but I forgot there's one other thing I needed to do. I need to turn, and where it says iterations, we need to make, we need to tell this how many iterations we want. And we're going to use this by just identifying the actual folder itself, because that number will be it. So we're just going to type ch underscore, or ch, open and close parentheses. Okay, we've got the single quotes in there, and the location is // squiddies. Yep, there it is. Okay, now this gives us the number of things. It shows us we should have 2 iterations going in here. So this will iterate twice and create 2 iterations of Squidward. All right, now let's return back to the Squidward node. Whoops. And get back to what I was talking about. Okay, so what we want to try to do is access the information that's coming out of this count channel. So here we have count, count. And so let's go ahead and quickly access this. So for here, I'm just going to type in ch and open and close parentheses, open and close single quotes. And so I'm going to give the path of the channel that I want, and which should be // count / count. If I hit enter, oh, it moved. How much did it move by? 10. Okay, count, count. Oh, it is that. Okay, it is 10 in there. Okay, woo. So it is still into there. I forgot to rebake this. Yeah, there it is. Okay, and so now the translation here corresponds to 2, and which is metadata plus 1. So this is working the way I want it to. But this still doesn't give us what we want here. We have to put this number inside of the location of the channel we're trying to access. And so what we're going to do is embed this ch method inside of, you guessed it, another ch method. But we're going to take advantage of Python strings, which in this case, I think behaves a little bit more interesting. So I'm going to embed this. So CH, and I'm going to put parentheses around this whole thing. And then I'm going to say open single quotes, close quote, dot format. And then I'm going to drop that in there. Okay, and so what this Python statement is going to do is it's going to insert the value of count inside of some placeholder that I put in here. So I'm going to put in a placeholder, and I'm going to call it dot dot slash pause, and then open and close curly brackets, which is Pythonese for a placeholder, says, okay, stick it in here, X. All right, I'm going to hit apply. And it should be able to be fine, but it should be 0 because there is no value here. I'm going to click accept, and there it is. My statement should be working. I'm going to test to see if this works now. Okay, we've got Squidward, the position 1. Now if I go ahead and move this around, okay. So now Squidward is moving exactly like I expected it to. Okay, so my naming and my Pythonese is working. And in order to propagate this, I'm just going to copy this entire statement, Control C, and then I'm going to hit Tab, move on to the Y channel, hit Control V, change this to Y, hit the Tab key, change this to Control V, change this to Z. All right, and now I'm going to drop into the rotation, the Y channel. I'm going to hit Control V again, but instead of pause X, I'm going to change this to rot. Okay, and now what we're going to do is a very similar thing over into the color, but instead of pause and rot, we're going to use the color information. So I'm going to move this in here. I'm going to hit Control. Oh, I'm going to change this over to Python. Got to change it because it won't understand it if it's an H script. Got to make sure to turn that over to Python. Okay, so now it's in Python. So I'm going to hit Control V. And so instead of pause X, I want to use color, open and close curly brackets, R. Okay, that is the Houdini formation. So give me the red channel. Whoops. And then I'm going to tab, put this into the green channel. So color G, hit tab, and then finish up with the blue channel and color B. All right. Accept up. Okay. All right, now let's see what we got here. Okay, I'm going to hide Crag here. He's kind of in the way. Oh, we've got multiple versions of Crag. All right, we want just have Squidward. Let's have 3 versions of Squidward. All right, let's move the first version over just a bit over here. Let's give him a little bit of rotation so he's facing his buddies. Okay, let's give this guy some color. All right, give me some red, damn it. All right, we got red. We got a red Squidward. All right, let's make this one a green Squidward. And we're going to leave him right there and make this one a blue Squidward. Okay, we got a blue Squidward. And let's move this guy over just a bit and have him addressing his brothers. All right, cool. All right, now we can create as many of our Squidwards as we want to. If we wanted to create 4, here's an extra Squidward. Let's make this guy pretending like he is a golden dive bomber. Okay, so he's going to sit over here and he's going to sit over the rest of his companions. And he is going to be, oh, yeah, that's right. We only have rotation in the Y, so we can't change this, but we're just going to have him, like he's going the other direction. He don't have anything to do with this nonsense, so he's out of there. All right, so that is where I said. Now, if we were to lock our digital asset, Save node type, match current definition. Now we still can go ahead and add more squiddies and change their position to however we want to. And it should not be bound by any sort of limitation by being locked because it is now embedded inside of the multiparm. All right, well, there's a few other multiparms that we had to deal with. Now, we use the basic list for that, which is kind of cool, but it is kind of limited by the amount of space that your digital asset takes up on the screen. Now, if you want something that is a little bit more dynamic, what you can do is I'm going to, well, let's go ahead and expose and allow our content to be moving up. So I'm going to click over here where it says, okay, squiddies. Now a multiparm block list, we can choose scrolling and click apply. What that does is it puts it into a scroll list. So if our view area of our digital asset gets small, we can scroll through all of our various squiddies, which are now available to us in a window. Nice. All right, now suppose that we said, okay, screw this. We want to just be, instead of scrolling, we want them to be individual tabs. So if we go multiparm block tabs, click apply. Now we have a tab for every one of our squiddies, and we can manipulate them any sort of way that we want. And I haven't tried this, but I imagine what we could do is go ahead and change the name, but I haven't quite figured out how to do that yet. All right, so that pretty much concludes what I wanted to go over today. And so here is a bunch of additional digital asset toys that you can manipulate to really add up some punch and life into your digital assets. Make those artists want to use your tools, right? So that's the overall ambition. Create a happy digital asset environment for everybody to go ahead and use your awesome digital assets and make wonderful art with that. Okay, with that, I'm going to go ahead and close up today's version of Houdini Secrets. If you enjoyed what you were looking at today, go ahead and subscribe to my channel, Chris Rhoda, on Facebook. Well, actually not Facebook. Yeah, that too. But check me out also on this YouTube channel. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button to this YouTube channel. Check me out on Facebook. That is Chris Rhoda. And there's also the Orlando Houdini Users Group. Go ahead and check that out if you live in the Central Florida area. Come on and join our group. We're going to have our next meeting. Oh, when's our next meeting going to be? Oh, I have that information here. It's going to be October 16th. So for calling all Central Floridian Houdini folks, we're going to be meeting again on the 16th. So look out for the documentation. Or check us out on the meetup page, or look for the Orlando Houdini Users Group message page on Facebook. Or also you can check me out on LinkedIn. That's Chris Rhoda on LinkedIn. All right, have a great weekend, folks. I look forward to seeing you again next week on Houdini Secrets, where we will be going over more procedural building generation. All right, thank you very much. See you next week.